there, welcome back to 52 Weeks of Vlogging. It's Friday! Yeah, okay, it's still Friday because the last video went up today also because Nano. But look, I changed my hair. This is how we do it, baby. So let's talk books. I want to share with you a book that I read recently by Elizabeth Laban. Laban, I suck at names. The Tragedy Paper. Okay, can we take a minute and just admire the gorgeousness that is this cover? Pretty, pretty cover. Cover love! The cover is basically why I bought the book. Also, the author is a journalist or some other something working in news or something of some such. In other words, she has a pedigree. Pub tip, if you want people to buy your book, have a pedigree. Filed under advice I am happy to dispense, but will probably not actually follow myself. Okay, so the premise of this book is that these kids are at boarding school and it's an elite school and they arrive on the first day of their senior year and there is a gift for each kid in their dorm room left behind by the outgoing senior because the senior dorm rooms are like just for the seniors. And this kid's gift is a bunch of CDs and a letter from the kid before him saying that he's giving him the meat of what is the most difficult assignment in senior year, which is the tragedy paper. It's explained that the tragedy paper is their equivalent of the senior thesis, and it's hard! And that's pretty much all you need to know about the tragedy paper at this point. The book is written in alternating points of view. One, Duncan, the incoming senior, and the other, Tim, last year's senior. And we pick up at the beginning with Duncan. Chapter 1, Duncan. Enter here to be and find a friend. As Duncan walked through the stone archway leading into the senior dorm, he had two things on his mind. What treasure had been left behind for him, and his tragedy paper. Well, maybe three things. He was also worried about which room he was going to get. If it wasn't for the middle item, though, he tried to convince himself, he would be almost 100% happy. Almost. But that paper, the Irving School's equivalent of a thesis project, was sucking at least 30% of his happiness away, which was a shame on such an important day. Basically, he was going to spend a good portion of the next 9 months trying to define a tragedy in the literary sense. Like, what made King Lear a tragedy? Who cared? He could do that right now. A tragedy was when something bad happened. Bad things happened all the time. But the senior English teacher, Mr. Simon, who just happened to be the adult overseer of his hall this year, cared. He cared a lot. And he loved to throw around words like magnitude and hubris. Duncan would much rather work with numbers than words, and he'd heard of the occasional Irving senior getting by without doing too much. Maybe all he had to do really was get a C on the paper. He would not let this ruin his senior year. Not after the mistakes he made last year. But when he thought about it, he realized it might be good to have a distraction. It was certainly better than dwelling on the past. Okay, so right away we wonder what is the past and what's going on with that and why is he so concerned about what room he's going to get and what is the meat of his tragedy paper exactly, since the back of the book tells us that that's what he gets. I'm intrigued. And I was also enchanted and drawn in, and I stayed that way through the entire book. I loved this book. I loved the way she took that alternating perspective between Duncan and Tim and used it as a tool to draw out the suspense of what was going to happen. And although I did know that something was going to happen ahead of time, it was kind of obvious already. So it was really a matter of exactly what that something was going to be, and I thought she handled that really well. I wasn't fond of the chapter subheadings because they kind of gave a lot away about the chapter and they ended up just being lines pulled out from later within that chapter, which didn't really strike me as very original and ended up just kind of being annoying. It was distracting when I would be reading the chapter and read this line that sounded familiar and then I'd be like, oh yeah, that's because that was the name of the chapter. But that really was a little niggle in the grander scope of the book. Not only because it will look beautiful on your bookshelf, but for the writing style, for the underlying fascinating premise, because I thought the setting was done very, very well. Also, I just think this book really gets at the heart of tragedy and how tragedy can touch all of us in our daily lives and how we have to move forward from it and how we can move forward from it. And I think that's a valuable thing. The Tragedy Paper, find it at your local bookstore or online, links down in the description. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.